Exactly. Like, even if you feel like she did, the people that were making fun of what was being said was fucking sick. Fucking sick. Fucking disgusting. Like, I'm never gonna forget Raven Simone, Chris Rock, Ashley Benson, Dakota Johnson, Jennifer Aniston, a bunch of people. A bunch of people. And they are going to rot. Personally, I think it's embarrassing enough that you decided to get on here 2 years ago and make fun of Amber Heard with the help of your misogynistic boyfriend, but we'll see how that works out for you in the end. This is not like a groundbreaking concept by any means, but some women really are just masculine. They're not this project that needs to be fixed. They're not this like something where your magical love is going to make them more feminine. It's not like that. And it's very weird that you guys view masculine women as something like there's something wrong with them. And some people can have like a complicated relationship with masculinity, and it can be a defense thing, it can be whatever. But some women really are just masculine, and masculinity does not belong to men. It does not belong to them. And I don't like how you guys act like it belongs to them, or it's like something that there has to be wrong with a woman in order for her to embody masculinity. And like, yes, there can be masculine women that also want to be in touch with feminine aspects, but there also are masculine women that are just super comfortable in being masculine. They like being dominant. They like being assertive. They like being providers. They like all those things. And there is not something wrong with them. And you are not like this magical femme if you're able to get them to be more feminine, because at the end of the day, they are still a woman. They are not this woman that is just so fucked up that she is trying to be a man, or she's trying to emulate what men do. Point is just to stop trying to fix masculine women or talking about them like they are broken or like they have to be feminine, otherwise there's just this big deep dark like problem. And that's not to say that that doesn't apply to anybody, because I'm sure it does, but you guys look at masculine women like, oh, I need to save her. I need to, like, she's this fucking, like, secret princess I need to put in a fucking tower and make her feel comfortable with being feminine, because God forbid a woman doesn't want to be feminine. It's weird, and I wish that you guys could be normal about masculine women, because there's not something inherently wrong with them. And again, masculinity does not belong to men. It doesn't belong to them. And women pull it off a lot better. So there is nobody on earth that has a better PR team than men. Like, they can be the worst person of all time. They can have hundreds of allegations against them. They can be convicted no matter what. There is going to be people that are going to act like they're their $1 million PR team. So when you fix your pretty little mouth as a woman to defend them, I want you to remember that the worst man on earth, whoever you believe that to be, he has shooters. He has people that will ride for him until the day that they die. So when you fix your mouth to defend a man, I want you to remember that. And then I also want you to remember that the most innocent woman, the most kind, loving, nurturing, just majestic woman ever is more hated than the worst man on planet Earth. I guarantee you that. Which is why you will never catch me defending men. They have plenty of people, some very unintelligent women, some very misinformed women, and a bunch of loser men defending them. So me personally, I'm gonna sit that one out. I'll defend the women. I'll defend the women. One aspect of misogyny that I don't think is talked about enough is expecting more from women than you do men. And it's like people have rightfully come to expect less than the bare minimum from them, because they tend to do less than the bare minimum. But that doesn't mean that we should hold women to higher standards, because women are easier to bully into submission or easier to convince that what they're doing is wrong than men are, because men tend to be more unapologetic and people admire that in men, but not quite as much in women. Like, when men are unapologetically just don't give a fuck about anything or don't stand for anything that is politically correct or just morally right, they are seen as like, oh my god, like, I'm obsessed with him, he just doesn't give a fuck. But if a woman is like that, she's a bitch, she's cold, she's this, she's that. And I just think that we need to keep that in mind a bit more. Really think about how we hold women to higher standards than men, and why we do that, and why we don't expect or ask for more accountability from them. Just an example, when people were talking about what's happening in Palestine a bit more than they are now, there was a lot of expectation for people like Taylor Swift, Haley Bailey, whatever her name is, the redhead girl on here, a bunch of women that have large platforms, and yes, it is okay to expect that someone with a large platform does something with it that is like for a good cause, but it's not lost on me that people like Cristiano Ronaldo, whatever, that soccer player that has like a million rape allegations, he was never listed in the people that should speak up, even though he's the most followed person on Instagram. He has like over 500 million followers, and no one was mentioning his name in these things. Like, the expectations are just very different. Or when you think about everything that happened with Brooke Schofield, yes, what she said was absolutely fucking abhorrent and it should have been called out, but it's not lost on me that people with much larger followings like Bryce Hall, people like him are able to have their large followings and nobody expects anything, even though he's like this bottom feeding loser that is endorsing Trump now and was definitely paid to do it. He's a sellout and a fucking loser, and he has no value whatsoever, but he is not in conversations of people being called out. He has a woman of color as his girlfriend, I'm pretty sure, and he is still not being dragged to the pits of hell like Brooke was when she has 2 million followers. Like, a lot of the time the conversation is around, you have this platform and this is what you're doing with it, or you don't deserve your platform because you didn't do this or you're not doing that. But that standard is not there for men. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be there for women, but I'm saying it should be equal across the board. We should still expect more we should still expect a lot more from men than we do. That's my entire point. I'm not defending the women. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have ever been called out. I'm just saying it's not lost on me that the expectations for men and women are vastly different. And when you participate in these hate campaigns against women, I want you to ask yourself, have I ever held a man to this standard? Have I ever been this angry about what a man has done? And what have I done with that hatred? Have I left a bunch of hate comments? Have I left really nasty things wishing death upon them? Have I done that to men? Probably not. I guarantee you not. Have I been nasty and saying things about a man's appearance like I have about women? Probably not. Have I fixed my mouth to make comments about their botched surgeries, or they have too much lip filler, or they have too much this and that? Have I done that with men? No. And it's not like they don't get things done, but they're able to do those things. They're able to have autonomy. They're able to make choices for themselves without being scrutinized in the way that women are. And I think that people, no matter how woke you think you are, you more likely than not hold women to a higher standard than men. And it's not a good thing. It's very misogynistic. And you really have to think about why you're so okay with putting women up here and then applauding a man for doing like less than the bare minimum. That's a problem. I didn't know that this was a thing, but apparently there are religious people that are feminist. I don't know why that never occurred to me, because I thought being a true feminist and acknowledging all the ways that misogyny intersects into quite literally everything, I feel like it doesn't correlate with religion. I feel like being a feminist and supporting religion is like saying that Black Lives Matter and then going to join the police force. Those things don't really make sense. Like, it sounds like an oxymoron, because when a system cannot be divorced from its roots, which are misogyny and the subjugation of women, it just doesn't make sense to follow something when you can acknowledge the other ways that misogyny hurts women and the other systems in place that hurt women, but making an exception for religion. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, to hold on with a death grip, something that cannot be divorced from those things. Like, the fact that the state can control what happens to women's bodies is partially because of religion. A lot of the legislation that is against women is due to the fact that people have religious views and they use that to control society, but specifically women. It can't be divorced from the fact that religion literally will make the excuse for why men are able to do terrible, awful, disgusting, vile things to women and girls. I just don't understand supporting that as a feminist. Like, even the idea of worshiping a man who punishes you for having a sex life, or just like so many things, it doesn't make sense. Regardless of what you believe, I know there's different beliefs within different religions, but I just don't think that they can be divorced from the misogyny of it all. Like the fact that a man is considered the god is misogyny in and of itself, because how is it that man created life when only women create life technically? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I know you guys like to tussle when it comes to religion, but Sky Daddy will be okay. And so will you. I'm so excited for the Wicked movie. You have no fucking idea. You have no idea. Like, I've always loved Wicked, Wizard of Oz, everything within that world. But the fact that Ariana Grande is doing it makes me like, I want all the merch. Like, they are doing so many like unserious collaborations, like with every brand that you could possibly think of, and I'm like, I need every single thing. Like, I'm so excited, both as a fan of Wicked and the whole story, but also as someone that is such a supporter of Ariana, where I'm like, I can't wait to watch her shine. I could cry thinking about it. I'm gonna go all out. I'm gonna get the special ticket. I'm gonna get the bucket. I'm gonna get all the merch my bank account can possibly let me have. I'm gonna go all out, and I'm gonna make sure I dress up for the premiere. If I take my little sister, I'm gonna make sure she dresses up too. Like, I'm ready to make this a whole event. So I'm so excited, because I haven't had a movie to be like this about in so long. But I'm genuinely so excited every time like a new merch announcement comes out. I'm like, I need that, like, biblically. I think the worst coping I've ever seen is people convincing themselves that men that are awful to women, that are violently misogynistic, have to be secretly gay. It's a massive denial and just a lack of acknowledgement of the fact that they really do just hate women. It's not that they're gay, it's not that they're closeted. They are very much attracted to women and they want the benefits of being with women, but they still don't like women or see women as people. Like, they can want to sleep with a woman, even want to marry a woman, but that does not mean that they see women as people. And that is something that is so important to know as a woman, instead of trying to use that lame ass coping mechanism of, oh, he must be gay. It's not because he just fucking hates me, it's because he's gay. For one, not only is that disrespectful to gay men and homosexuality, that's like weird as fuck, but also, like, think about that man who had like probably hundreds of men sexually abusing his wife after he drugged her and stuff like that. They were together for like 50 years. Think about boys that kill their moms over not making the right plate of food or not giving them the electronic device that they wanted. Think about the little boys that are raping little girls at school. Think about all those different examples that come up every single day. And it's not this like rare, far and few between occurrence like people want to think that it is. People want to think it's like rare, like most of them aren't like that, but in reality, that is not the case. Most of them do really hate women, and if there weren't certain laws in place, they would do a lot worse. And one of the integral parts of the patriarchy is women being very forgiving or believing that men collectively are better than they actually are. And it's really important to dismantle that, I feel like, just in terms of your own way of thinking and thinking that you're going to be the exception because you're so fucking special or whatever. And I don't know how you would navigate that. I'm personally all for the 4B movement, so I have no advice in that regard. I just would say don't be with men at all, but I know that that is not feasible for everyone. Some people are willing to risk a lot in order to have that romantic love and to have that validation, and I have no thoughts on that, or at least not thoughts that I'm going to share. But they're not gay, they just hate women. It's just that simple. That's not to say that nobody ever struggles with internalized homophobia and they don't make it the women around them's problem. But I don't think it's quite as common as you guys would like to believe it is. And it's like a major cope to try to convince yourself that, oh, he doesn't hate me, he just wants dick. I think that the guy that runs ARGD, if you haven't heard about that, it's a brand called All Rapists Gotta Die. It's a clothing brand. As far as I know, a pretty expensive one. I don't know. Anyway, 20% of the proceeds are supposed to go to help rape survivors, and they're supposed to be spreading awareness and all these things. But I have questions. I have a couple questions. For one, I want to know if his sister, his mom, his grandma gave him the okay to share their stories, and also how they feel about him essentially profiting off of them. And yes, some of the money does go to helping survivors, and that's really, really great. But obviously the other 80%, some of it goes to operating, but some is getting pocketed, obviously. And that's fine because it's his brand and whatever. I just have questions. There's also the fact that none of the items say all rapists gotta die. They all say ARGD, which means fuck all if you're just the average normal person that sees it. So I'm not sure how that is raising any sort of awareness or showing any sort of alliance with survivors when people go out and just wear it. And I've seen a lot of people in his comments making that point and saying, at least in the back of it, you should put all rapists gotta die all spelled out to make your stance very clear so that people that see it, they will know that that's what that's for, to show survivors that you are in alliance with them and that you think that rape is reprehensible. I think that would be a lot more helpful at spreading the message, and it would look like less of a money grab opportunity. Again, I'm not saying that those are his intentions, but when you are not making your message clear beyond TikTok and when people go out into the world and they wear your clothing, there is no indication that that's what that is about. But yeah, obviously I hope everything is like legit and good and it is exactly as he's saying for it to be, and I hope that he can take some criticisms and questions and apply them so that it can do even more good. For one, there are plenty of things being done by women while they also have to worry about being 1 in 5 women that are sexually assaulted by men every fucking day. We live with that fear every fucking day. And most of us have experienced it. The sexual harassment, the stalking, all of those things. We have been made to feel unsafe in our own bodies because of men. So don't ever fix your nasty, unwashed fucking fingers to make it seem like women don't care enough about sexually assault, something that they experience more than literally anyone. And also, we don't need to start bullshit ass companies using someone else's experiences to make 80% profit and giving a measly fucking 20% of proceeds. And we don't even know how true that is, for one. We don't even know if he even has a sister. We don't even know if she authorized this. We don't know if she also benefits from this because her story is being used as the fucking like selling point of it. We don't know enough for you to be meat riding this man. And also, your head would make a great fucking helium balloon because you're so fucking stupid. You have to be really fucking stupid to think that women don't care enough about things like this. You're stupid. We have no choice but to care. We have no choice but to be on constant alert because unfortunately men exist. Fuck you. People have this weird obsession with policing how victims of abuse respond to the abuse, what they do to get out, what they do as revenge, whatever you want to call it. I personally don't care. I don't care. Whatever you choose to do that makes you feel better about the abuse that you have endured, that you do against your abusers, I really, really, truly do not give one single fuck. And the way that people get so up in arms about how abusers are treated is very weird. It's very fucking weird, especially when they're like parents or whatever. I don't give a fuck because you knew what you were doing when you were abusing your child. So I don't care if they end your life and they spend all your money. I don't care what they do. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care if they literally, I don't care. And I think it's weird to police people that have gone through things that you yourself who are not in their exact situation with their exact circumstances, for you to fix your mouth to speak on their experiences and make it seem like they should have dealt with it in a different way, or this is what I would have done, blah, blah, blah. Be glad that you don't have to know what you would have done. And mind your fucking business. It's so easy to mind your fucking business. Not everything needs commentary. Not everyone needs your opinions or your morality or whatever, because however someone chooses to respond to abuse is completely up to them and completely personal. And I just don't care. I support them. I usually think that someone that has been abused, when they get their revenge, I think they could have done worse and they should have done worse because I'm against abuse. Not enough of you are. I love experiencing the world through the eyes of someone that doesn't see other women as competition and that just loves making other women feel good. Like, I was running errands the other day and I saw so many just absolutely breathtaking women, like stunning outfits, like just, I was like, I should not be allowed to look at you for free. Like, this is crazy. How do you look like that? Like, I wanted to fall to my fucking knees every 5 minutes because there was another beautiful woman standing in front of me, just dressed amazingly, just being herself. And I'm like, I worship the ground you walk on, every single one of you. Like, I can't believe other women don't experience the world in that way because they're like, oh, she thinks she's all that. Or just like very insecure, lame, corny views of other women. I love that I'm not like that. I love it so freaking much because I'm like, when I see a woman just super confident and just wearing the fuck out of her outfits, everything, I'm like, I'm your biggest fan. I love you. And women with internalized misogyny will never experience that or the genuine love and connection you can have when you don't see other women as your competition or as your enemy or anything like that. It's just, it's so beautiful, and it makes me so sad that so many women and girls are so busy like competing with other women and seeing them as a threat and stuff like that, that they can't appreciate the beauty in front of them. It's a shame. In honor of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I wanted to talk about some women that had their abuse and their experience made a mockery of by the media, by your regular everyday people, by everybody. So I'm going to start off with Whitney Houston. She's my favorite woman that has ever existed. A lot of people wrote off her relationship with Bobby Brown as them both being toxic, and they romanticized their relationship and refused to acknowledge the abusive environment created by Bobby. And he's unfortunately still alive. I just had to throw that in because it's sickening to me that Whitney and her daughter passed away and he's still alive and kicking. Something's not right about that. And then we have Amber Heard. What happened to her weighs heavily on my heart every single day because we had companies profiting from her physical and sexual abuse, selling products inspired by her story. The harassment and the next level misogyny that was thrown at her, like even someone like Diddy is not getting even half of what Amber Heard has gotten over these past couple of years. And that is, it just says a lot because it was never about you believing that she actually did that to that big 2 times her fucking age man who had the power to have her drugged and had the power to decide who dressed her, who drove her, all those different things. You're fucking stupid if you believe that she abused him. But yeah, I think that within a couple years, when some of these NDAs break or whenever he finally, then people will realize the truth and they're gonna feel so fucking awful and say, oh, we failed her. But I want you to remember that it was you. You did that. You chose to be so violently misogynistic that you believed something that didn't make any sense because you saw a couple funny clips on TikTok. None of them were funny though. And then we have Tina Turner, the absolute icon. Rest in peace to her. I really hope she spent the last couple of years of her life just free and happy and in love and at peace. Because for decades, people have been making a mockery out of the abuse that she faced at the hands of Ike. There are so many references in songs and movies and shows. It actually makes me so sick. I never found it funny. It's really heavily disgusting. And then we have Pamela Anderson, who released a really, really great documentary. I believe it was last year or the year before that. Loved it so much. It's on Netflix, so watch it if you haven't seen it. But people were dressing up as her and Tommy Lee, even knowing that he was physically abusive to her. And no one takes it seriously. No one cares about how those things made her feel, especially with that stupid fucking show. Pamela and Tommy and Pamela, whatever. On Hulu that they did a couple of years ago. That shit was fucking terrible. I didn't watch it, but I know it was terrible because she didn't authorize it and it romanticized her abusive relationship. And it's so fucking disgusting how people do not care about survivors. And then we have Robin Givens, that was married to Mike Tyson, who somehow has kept a really, really great reputation despite going on live TV and saying that his best punch was when he hit her. People treated her so disgustingly. I can't even really get into it. It's so disgusting knowing that the admission and everything was very public and he still was able to have a really, really great reputation to this day. He's disgusting. Everyone that ever defended him and made a mockery out of what she went through is absolutely disgusting too. And I hope that at some point we get to a place where people do not think violence against women is something to laugh about, because it's not. There are so many more survivors of abuse than you even know, so it's really important to be careful about how you speak about it, because maybe some of these women won't see it, but your friends, your sisters, your whoever have likely been through something like that, because women are at such high rates of experiencing intimate partner violence. So it's really important to educate yourself on how to support them and how to be an ally to survivors, because a world that is not safe for the innocent is a world that we need to fix. A lot of women literally treat feminism like it's their mother that they take for granted. Just completely blind to what it does for them every single day because they're too busy being the patriarchy's princess to appreciate it and to recognize it. There are so many things that women do not know that feminism has allowed for them to do. And so, in favor of men, in favor of having that beloved and so treasured male validation, they disregard it and they act like they're so beyond it because they are too busy worshiping men to even fight for their own rights and fight for their fellow women as well. That being said, I wanted to highlight a couple of things that maybe you didn't know that you're able to do and rights that you have based on feminism that so many people are against, of like calling themselves feminists while men end our lives every single day without giving it a second thought. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense because they will take away rights and they will take away lives and ruin our lives so often. But God forbid a woman is seen as like an extreme feminist. I never give a fuck about that because the misogyny and the violence under the patriarchy is way more extreme than I could ever be as a feminist. I don't care. Anyways, here are the examples. A lot of people don't know that it used to be really hard for women to get custody of kids because they viewed the husband as the head of the house and therefore he had more of a say in what happened. And a lot of people today like to say that women are usually favored in court cases, but actually courts want fathers to be in their children's lives so badly that even if they are a danger to other children, they will still give them private visits with their children. I have seen it and it's absolutely fucking disgusting, but I wish people would stop lying about how these things go. Anyways, we didn't used to have the right to buy property without our husband's permissions. We didn't have the right to make medical decisions for ourselves without our husband's permissions. We didn't have the right to take maternity leave until the 1990s. Feminists literally fought for our right to be able to have our names on the birth certificate as an unmarried woman. Imagine pushing an entire human out after carrying them for 9 fucking months, sometimes almost 10, and not being able to have your name on the birth certificate because you weren't married to a man. Having every single aspect of your life connected to whether you are in proximity to a man, whether you have been lucky enough to become a man's slave, wife, whatever you want to call it. The right to even wear pants, the right to even be able to smoke. And like, you can have your opinions about smoking, but the fact that we used to specifically be asked not to or be forced to not be able to smoke outside it's crazy. Also, feminists made it so that things like marital rape would actually become illegal. Husbands used to be able to do that to their wives with zero consequences whatsoever. This is one that people leave out a lot, especially when it comes to talking about the advancements that men have made and things that they have invented and blah, blah, blah. But women also weren't allowed to study certain things in school, whether it was like engineering, tech, whatever you want to call it. They fought for the right for us to be able to do that. And we also weren't able to publish books under our own names, so women would use male pseudonyms. And so a lot of the times when you look back in history, you'll see women doing stuff like using he, him pronouns and using male names instead for certain things, because not necessarily because they had gender dysphoria or they were men or they identified as men, but because women literally were not taken seriously or even allowed to participate in educational advancements and things like that. And that's part of why so many things that women developed and came up with are given credit to men, because we were not allowed to be anything more than their housewives, than their therapists, than their nurses and stuff like that. There are so many other things that are not quite as obvious to you, but I guarantee you most of the things that you do throughout your day that are not just like you by yourself, everything that you're allowed to do in the public space with your career, with your education, with your life, you are able to do because women fought really fucking hard. Some even lost their lives so that you could get on these apps and complain about wanting to be just a girl and hating feminism because feminism requires you to get off your ass and use your brain instead of using your appearance to get everything. I'm really, really sorry that feminism made it so hard for you to be a man's trophy wife, for you to be a man's property, that he's able to control your finances and control your livelihood. I'm sorry that feminism made it so hard. I'm sorry that feminism stopped making marriage a requirement for people, because we actually have rights outside of it and we can actually be seen as human for the most part without being someone's wife. You couldn't even own property. You think you would have been able to own a phone if it weren't for feminists? Let's be for real. You couldn't even own property by yourself. If you inherited money from your parents, your grandparents, whoever, your husband and your male relatives were still responsible for that money. They dictated where it went, all of that. So when you fix your mouths to complain because you just love being the prettiest princess in the patriarchy, I want you to think about that, and I want you to think about it very fucking deeply, because we owe everything to feminists. We really, truly do. You should be putting more respect on that. Whether you want to be a quote unquote hardcore feminist, whatever you want to call it, you should at the very least respect what was done for you in the past. That's it. I knew that men were weird about lesbians, but when I looked at this thread on Twitter about all of the male artists that have openly fantasized about raping lesbians, beating us up, all of that stuff in their songs, I was sick to my stomach. But especially when I saw Mac Miller on there. When I say I fell to my fucking knees when I found out he passed away, I fell to my knees. I was disgusted. I was sick to my stomach for the longest time. And for me to care about a man like that is crazy. Of course, anyone ODing is terrible and I would feel sympathy, whatever. But I had always listened to his music, and I haven't listened to like his whole discography by any means, to be honest. I mainly stuck with the Divine Feminine. I thought that was a beautiful album. But it's just, oh my God, it's so fucking disgusting. It makes me so, like, now I don't feel bad that he's gone. I'm like, okay, like, sorry for his family, of course. Sorry for anyone else that loved him, but he's one of those disgusting ass men too. So, okay, I wrote down a list the other day when I decided I was going to make a video about it. So I have a list, but I don't have a link to the thread. If anyone does, put it in the comments, because obviously I want to give credit where credit is due and whatever. And also the thread has like the actual lyrics, the actual songs, all that stuff. So Eminem, Fork Found in Kitchen, Prince, J. Cole, Drake, Future, Young Thug, A$AP Rocky, E40, Kodak Black, Mac Miller, Lil Uzi Vert, Cameron, 6ix9ine, Nelly, MGK, Chris Brown, of course, The Weeknd, and Lil Yachty.
So when I was watching that video of Billie Eilish on the red carpet, literally looking like a 10 out of 10, but because you could see some of her cleavage through a mesh top, the comment section was filled with porn addicts. Sorry to say that, but it's the truth. And every single one of them was talking about how disgusting Billie Eilish looked and how she's aging terribly and how she's all wrinkly and used up and nasty, and like, oh my gosh, like she used to be such a go-to to masturbate to, and now she's like too old looking. Oh, she's not gonna age well. Oh my gosh, why does she look like she's 47? Literally, I'm not joking you. She had like one or two smile lines, because that's like the type of smile she has. Like, you know, some people have like dimples. I feel like she's one of those girls that has smile lines. It's so cute. And then she had literally one forehead wrinkle. I'm not exaggerating here. She looked stunning, but because she didn't look 15, she looked like an old, nasty, used up rat to those men. And whenever I see videos like that and I read the comments, I think to myself, thank God. Thank God nobody's going to be seeing me in 4K, because if that's what they thought of Billie, all of those porn addicted men, the men that are so used to getting off to and staring at and habitually lusting women that are number one, Botox to the gods, number two, fillered up to the gods, number three, filters upon filters upon filters, even on porn videos, especially on OS. If they thought that about Billie Eilish, I would literally look like to them. I have the beauty filter on right now on TikTok. I would look like a corpse that had been in the ground for a century and then dug up, also in a swamp. That's probably what they would think that I was. I'm not kidding when I say porn use, lust, social media has literally rotted the brains of these men to the point where if they see a woman in real life, or even if they see a celebrity in her 20s online with like no Botox, they're horrified. They can't conceptualize what their eyes are seeing. They can't fathom. Billie freaking Eilish, one of the most, in my opinion, beautiful women ever. Ladies, you can't compete. There is no competition. You can't compete with a porn addiction. You can't compete with love. The really sick thing to think about is that she is now, Alicia Silverstone is the age now that men were when they were lusting over and masturbating to her when she was a child, when she was a teenager. Like, she's now the age of some of those men. And they look at her now and they're like, ew. I've seen photos of her go around Facebook before, because I'm a millennial, so I am on Facebook, and I've seen comments. Any picture of her that comes up, the men are tearing her apart. Because if a man used to masturbate to a woman, used to lust after her, fantasize about her, use her for his coping mechanism, porn addiction, and then she ages, I'm sorry, and then she's a human, like she's right, they will literally tear her apart. And in this video, I had people that were commenting and they were like, why do you want those men to think that you're like not old, wrinkly, and nasty? I wasn't commenting on the fact. I wasn't saying that, oh, I'm glad they're not going to see me because I don't want them to think I'm ugly. It's not that. What I was saying was that if I was trying to use like an example or like an analogy, I guess, I don't know, because I was saying Billie Eilish is like 22 years old. 22. And these porn addicted men online are already tearing her apart because she's aging, because she's old already. She's wrinkly. Why does she look like she's in her 40s? These are all the comments. I was hundreds of them. The video, and people were mad because I didn't post the video, but I'm not going to post. I'm sorry, I don't post every video I talk about. She was very normal. She was wearing like a black lace dress, and you could see a little bit of her cleavage like through the lace. And I think her hair was pulled back, and she had really dark, like tight line eyeliner. She literally looked stunning. But again, in this video, because it was like high definition, you could just see like two little creases and then like one crease on her forehead, literally 22 years old, and they were tearing her apart. And I think about, when I do see videos like that, I literally think to myself, have you guys ever like turned your camera on? And your cameras nowadays, like I have a Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Cameras nowadays are like HD to the max. Like they pick up everything. And sometimes I'll turn my camera on and you can see like, it almost looks like I'm wearing a mask. That's how much like texture, wrinkles, pores, everything that's showing. And I think to myself, how insane it would look to have like, let's say a normal 31-year-old woman like on a red carpet in HD, what these men would think about that, right? That's what I'm saying. And it's a comment on how the porn addicted men of our society today are so incredibly brainwashed by porn, thirst traps, filters, Botox, and fillers. But even with Botox and fillers, that's only going to do 10% of the work to make these women still look like they're 16 years old. Every porn video they're watching, every thirst trap they're masturbating to, every photograph, they're all have filters on them. You know what I'm saying? And it is just so sad to know this is a big part of the world. This is a big part of the world that we're living in right now. Because the comments that were talking about how old Billie Eilish looked at 22, I can't get over it. Talking about, and this was on Instagram, by the way, talking about how old and disgusting and used up and raggedy she looked. These comments had thousands, and these were the top liked comments. I didn't look at the video and then scroll to find these. As soon as I opened the comments on that video, it was the top like 10 to 20 comments, and it was hundreds and thousands of likes on these comments of other men agreeing, oh yeah, she's going to be out of the industry in no time. She doesn't age well. She's not aging well because she doesn't look 16 anymore. And all the girls these men are masturbating to are still in high school or freshly out of high school, or they're made to look like in porn like a high schooler. And it is sad. And this one lady commented and she said, well, why do you care what these men think when there's good men out? It's because this is a large portion of them. And a large portion of men, the overwhelming majority, they are using porn. They do use it as their coping mechanism. They do have porn addiction. They are living in lust. They are objectifying women in this way. And that is terrifying, especially as a mother. And something that I think is important to point out, to talk about. You guys have seen that trend where it's like when you're running from the serial killer, but then you realize it's so-and-so. And then like you stop and you turn around. And it's like, because you want to see them, because it's like, I don't care if they're going to kill me because like I'm so attracted to them, basically. So I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not even going to throw it out there, but listen, this guy did one and it went viral and it said, but the serial killer is Madeline Klein in her prime. Now, first of all, why did I think when I read that name, it was that gymnastics girl? I don't even know what her name is, but I thought it was that girl. But then I realized, I was like, oh no, it's this other girl. So Madeline Klein is 26 years old. Okay. And I think she started her thing on TikTok. Like she got famous on TikTok. Tell me why the comment section was just full of men arguing about whether she is or is not in her prime. She is 26 years old. She is 26. It's the similar issue with Billie Eilish. Billie Eilish is in her early 20s. And men are already saying she's aging terribly. She's aging terribly. She's hit the wall. She's done. No one's going to want her anymore. She's like 22 years old. Madeline Klein, kind of the same thing. Except half the guys in the comment section were like, bro, she's still in her prime. And then the other half were like, no, she's 26. She's past her prime. And then other guys were like, no, she'll always be in. Why is this an argument? At 26 years old, imagine being 26. I remember at 26, I felt like I was finally an adult. I feel like my life was just starting. I felt like early 20s for a lot of women, you're like struggling. You're like finding your identity. You're like learning to be independent. And then boom, you hit 26 and it's like, you're old. You're expired. Nobody wants you anymore. And this is, again, Madeline Klein, who is just another female type celebrity person who, she is beautiful. She is a beautiful woman, but I obviously do think that all women are beautiful. I literally can't look at a woman and be like, she's not beautiful, because it's truly what I believe. But she's a woman who has made a persona and like made a career using her beauty and using her looks, and to just be starting your career with whatever she's doing. I think, does she sing or something? I don't know. Anyway, to be starting this career and to already have men arguing over the fact of have you hit the wall or not because you're 26 years old. And no, you were actually in your prime 4 years ago. It is terrifying. It's terrifying. And this is why it's terrifying. I'm not terrified because I'm like, people are going to think I'm old and ugly. No, it's terrifying because I'm like, this is the world I'm raising my kids in. This is what I'm raising my kids in. Social media, I can't, but it's like you see all forms of it. You see all forms of the sexualization, objectification, and dehumanization of women on social media more than anywhere else in the world, aside from like movies and TV shows. Social media is like at its peak. And I just can't fathom and I know people, like there were men saying that about Margot Robbie, but even Margot Robbie, Madeline Klein, literally, I feel like she just popped on the scene. Like I just found out who she was not too long ago, maybe like a year or two ago. She's literally so freaking young. And I'm like, what are these people talking about? But the problem is, and I've said it 1,000,001 times, the problem is a few different things. Number one, the majority of the girls they're masturbating to are close to 19, 20 years old. So of course their beauty standard is going to be teenagers, right? And very, very, very young 20-year-olds. But on top of that, even the girls that are in their 20s that they're habitually self-pleasuring to because they have a freaking porn addiction in their brain, and they have brain rot, and their dopamine receptors are fried, and their sexual arousal template is completely hijacked, and they don't even know what beauty is. They don't know what sex is, and they don't know what romance or monogamy is. Those women still are completely filtered. They're, obviously Botox and fillers, but at the end of the day, still everything is filtered. All the porn is filtered. All the OF stuff is filtered. All the thirst traps are filtered. They're looking at this stuff more than they're looking in real life. They're looking at this stuff, masturbating to it, sexualizing it, objectifying it, and searing it into their brain and frying their dopamine receptors off with this hyper-sexualized, false reality, delusion, fantasy that they're living in, that even if they saw a woman in real life, or when they do see a woman in real life, she's always going to look old. She's always going to look like she's not in her prime. She's always going to look like she hit the wall. She's always going to look like a used up old piece of dirty rag, whatever you want to say. These are not my thoughts. I'm saying this is how men like that are viewing the world and women. And it's probably going to get to a point where they're not even going to be able to watch any video of a woman at all. They're only going to have to watch like AI, anime, and shit like that, because they're going to need something that is so unrealistic in terms of their face, their skin, and their body proportions, that no woman in the world, even no matter how much she's filtered, is going to be able to even touch that dopamine addiction in their brain. And I feel like we're just seeing that with the fact that these women are getting younger and younger and younger, as these men are saying, oh no, you're too old. You're too old at 26. You're too old at 22. You're used up at 22. Like, they just want a child. And I've said this before, men like that, it's going to get to a point where they just want a sexually mature child. And I know what you guys are going to say, not all men that use porn, not all men that have these porn dependencies want a sexually mature child. But look at the number one categories of pornography. It is teenage, barely legal, and high school porn. Tell me these men are not just craving and wanting a sexually mature child. That's what it is. And that should scare us, especially because these addictions, they always progress and they always escalate. So what is it going to progress to, and what is it going to escalate to before we as a society look at it and say, yeah, it's a little bit too much. Yeah, maybe we should cut back on this. Maybe we shouldn't be telling men everywhere, this is a normal, healthy coping mechanism, and you have every right to objectify and dehumanize women everywhere all the time. Here it is on a silver platter. No, thank you.
So that's very correct. I would even go so far as to argue this actually comes from racial stereotypes. Specifically, there is a stereotype of black people, and there has been since the slave trade first began and they first encountered white people on a large scale, of primitivity, right? Of being like animalistic, close to nature. It's extremely fucked up, and it still exists today. And part of that primitivity is a sexuality, a hypersexuality, a free and open sexuality. And from that, you get the very horrible racist stereotype of the black man as perpetrator of sexual assault. I don't know if TikTok will get mad at me for saying the real word, but rapist. And in my dissertation, I talked about how Angela Davis wrote about how that stereotype of black men also lends itself to a similar stereotype of black women. Because when the stereotype is that blackness is primitive, then black women get classed as, if not a rapist, then a hypersexual, like always up for it, you know, sort of promiscuous stereotype. And during that like early slave trade era, it used to be, of course, and we all know this, that having a little more fat on your body was considered more attractive. But thinness became the norm because it became a way for white people to separate themselves from the black people who were now enslaved. So it's like a way to justify that hierarchy in society. So when they call these black people more primitive, and they put fatness as a marker of that primitivity, then fatness and hypersexuality become intimately associated. So I do think that this stereotype is like completely rooted in racism and basically exists because it was originally created to justify white supremacy.
It's so interesting that you mentioned this, because I have definitely been called out for PDA a lot, but I thought I was just like, you know, being egregiously disgusting. And I get grossed out when I see anybody being affectionate in public. So I recognize when I do it that I am being hypocritical. But when I was doing research for my dissertation, I came across some critiques of this article that came out when Mike and Molly first aired. And it was called, "Should Fatties Get a Room, Even on TV?" So this is the article. It was on Marie Claire, but now you can find it on Yahoo. And basically, the writer of this article is like, well, yes, it's disgusting when fat people make out, because it's disgusting when fat people do anything, because fat people are disgusting. It's pretty egregious. She's literally like, it would gross me out just watching a fat person walk across a room. And she also talks about how you can be naturally thin, but you can't be naturally fat. And she's like, I get it, dieting's hard. But then she also gives her own diet and weight loss tips in the article about a TV show. It's wild. And like, think what you want, but the fact that this was published in a major publication, that this is like worthy of being written about, It's one of the most egregiously fatphobic articles I've ever read in my life, and I honestly recommend it if you want to read it for a laugh and then continue reading, because where they have it posted on Yahoo, there is also her apology. It makes me laugh. Anyway, though, it's definitely a real thing that people are grossed out by fat people engaging in PDA or any like kind of public romantic or sexual activity. One of the sources that I read for my dissertation talked about how in film a kiss symbolizes sex because they can't actually show sex. So I think, yes, kissing is like, I guess, a sexual adjacent activity, and it's a lot associated with sex in a lot of people's minds. And so just seeing fat people kissing reminds them that fat people have sex, and that like grosses them out or whatever. Just a fat person, even in the same world as sexuality, grosses them out. So yeah, I do ultimately think that probably fat people get judged more harshly for engaging in PDA. And now that I look back on my experiences being, you know, kind of jokingly chided for it, I wonder if that the reasons people say those things to me when I don't say those things to other people, even though, as I said, PDA bothers me, and I don't see my non-fat friends getting those things said to them or getting teased about that when they are engaging in that in public. Like, I do wonder if there's something about like the comedy and the juxtaposition of like, you wouldn't expect this, but it's happening. Weird. Like, call it out, make a joke about it because it's so absurd and because it makes you uncomfortable. But what's so odd is like, I find lots of people gross, and I don't get personally offended or like have to comment if they want to have sex with each other or if they want to be publicly affectionate in front of me. Why are they so obsessed with us? Why are they so bothered? Chill. This is so true, and people don't understand what the consequences of this are in many directions. The first consequence, of course, is that people assume this of fat people in real life. And so I had somebody else comment that when a fat person does the same behavior that if a thin person did, it would be called flirting. They're called like a creepy obsessive stalker. So that's one consequence. And then that like can mess you up psychologically in a whole lot of ways as a fat person, allow you to accept like poor treatment, or make you, in my case, this is just me talking about me, very mean and like hate men. Not the worst thing that could have happened, but also not the best. And then of course there's the fact that when people actually believe this, as people in my comments have been revealing, apparently they really do believe all fat women are sexual predators, okay? And when they believe that, that gives them a reason to further demean and ostracize and be cruel to fat people and reject them in an especially cruel way. Because the idea is like, you know, you're such a horrible person. But the last and probably most harmful consequence of this trope is that fat women are less likely to be believed about their sexual assaults, because it's assumed they're just desperate, they must always want it, so how could they possibly be assaulted? And of course, they're not attractive, so how could they possibly be assaulted? Even though we should all know by now that assault is not about sexual attraction, physical attraction, what you find beautiful. It's about power. And for a lot of men who feel powerless, taking that out on a person they don't find attractive is a logical step, because they want to feel better than someone. And they know they can get away with it if they have more power than this person. I read Rebel Wilson's memoir when I was doing research for my dissertation, because there is a whole chapter where she talks about all the ways in which she's been sexually assaulted and harassed in Hollywood. And there was this whole idea that she had that no one would ever want to assault her. So she got herself into some pretty dangerous situations because of that. And this is just one real world example of the harm that this trope can cause. Even to Rebel Wilson, who has like been the person enacting this trope so often.
Just a Girl in her content is proof that for a lot of women who are married, marriage for a lot of women is just the level of superiority or having a superiority complex because they're actually misogynist. A lot of women do not realize that going into a marriage, inherently, your chances of becoming a misogynist increase. The reason being is because marriage is not only a, law institution, but it's based in religion. Everything regarding religion is it's leaning into misogyny, because you have to abide by a man. The man has to make the rules, and you have to follow them. You don't get any autonomy over your body. Your whole life is given upon to a man. And that's why so many men win when it comes to marriages. That's why they thrive when they're in a marriage, because the only way that they can thrive is through the act of misogyny. And I think that on a subconscious level, Just a Girl knows that. She understands that she has had to tear herself down as a woman to stay in a marriage. That is why she is tearing down women who are not married. Because look at her. Like, I'm not trying to be funny, but look at her. Look at how she looks. Look at how she talks. The woman looks tired. Like, she looks like what she most likely is going through. And so this is why I am a firm believer. This is just my own personal belief. I do not trust anyone that makes content that is not vulnerable. When people are giving me information on a subject, on a topic, and there is not a level of vulnerability that content creator has, I instantly don't trust them. You cannot get on here and shame women due to their status of being single, unmarried. You cannot shame women who make that decision. Meanwhile, you're gatekeeping all of the things going on in your marriage. Like one thing I could say about Shira Seven, she cannot be exposed because she was vulnerable. Like, she admitted the fact that in order for her to get married, she had to be the side chick. I can respect that. I can expect that. I can understand and respect her content because there's a level of vulnerability that she has. People that get on this internet and they claim that they're giving you advice and yet they're not being vulnerable, they have a deeper motive. It could be a motive for money. It could be a motive for self-validating themselves, which I think is what it is for Just a Girl. She's trying to validate herself being married by shaming women who are not married, because she needs to feel better about the decision that she made regarding being married, because she realized that it's not the pretty picture and it's not this wonderful movie like she thought it was going to be, which is how it is for most women. And most women just cop it to, well, that's just how it goes with marriage. That they just take it as like, well, that's just how it is, and playing the victim. That's what women do, a lot of them. They will just be like, oh, well, they will literally create this dialogue with themselves where they have just accepted a livable type of tolerance to a circumstance that they do not like. And they just chalk it up to, well, every relationship has its issues. You know, how are you going to get through a marriage and you don't go through anything? Okay, you're going through something every fucking day. Like, that's not normal. Like, you're waking up dreading everything that's ahead of you for the day. You're only going to sleep to rest, to prepare for the next shitty day you have ahead of you because you don't like the life that you've constructed for yourself because someone told you to choose this life. And you listened to them based off of whatever BS you were fed or whatever you chose to believe. And I think it's very, very important that people practice discernment on who they're taking information from and what vibe you're getting from them. Like, Just a Girl comes off very, very disingenuous to me. And having to even have a platform where you have to bash other people for their decisions, come on. Like, here's the thing. I have nothing against married women. But married women are the reason why I'm single and why I choose not to get married. Yes, I've had my experiences with men, but all the people that are complaining to me about their relationship are married women. So even an anecdotal experience, and even within my family, seeing the dynamics of what a marriage looks like, Just a Girl is tired. She's struggling. And in order for her to get away from that internal struggle that she's having, the only thing that's going to make her feel better is to just knock down and talk down on women who choose not to get married.
Some men are not ready to have this conversation. I lied, put your clothes back on. Today we're going to discuss how for years the media portrayed fangirls as crazy, when in reality men have been doing the exact same thing with sports for decades. When men riot in the streets if their team wins, it's looked at as passionate. Versus when girls camp outside a venue peacefully, we're seen as obsessive. Band merch is viewed as cringy when men wear jerseys constantly at events, where that attire is completely inappropriate. If I hang a poster in my house, I'm childish. But if a man decorates the entire room in his team's color, that's totally normal. We literally had a wedding on Saturday. The dress code was just a tier below black tie. 4 separate men showed up in cargo shorts and a football jersey, and nobody said a thing. Nobody blinked. It was completely normal. I have a feeling the same reaction would not have been granted to a woman who showed up in a Taylor Swift t-shirt. I have seen grown men destroy their own property, smash TVs when their team loses. Hell, when their fantasy team loses. But somehow, because I own all the Twilight books, I'm obsessive. Society just doesn't like women and will instantly demonize anything women or girls seem to like.